So welcome to Friday night, and obviously Madeline Smith is here with us. I know you've all met her outside already. So yeah, we're going to get Emmet is going to take the lead on the questions, and we'll go to you then for your questions as well. I just want to bring your attention to one thing that'll also be here tomorrow. Is over here is wonderful photographs that have been taken by Melissa Trotter, who's a Canadian photographer, and this is actually the first time they've ever been seen outside of North America. So definitely have a look at them whenever you get a chance.
You were quite taken with them.
Oh, they're beautiful. I have one particular favourite, that one, the fourth along here. Absolutely exquisite. They're brilliant. Brilliant.
So I'm going to
atmospheric.
Throw it over to Emmet to start the questions.
So yeah, I guess we'll start with just the enduring appeal of Hammer. While you were making them, I mean, did you have any idea the longevity, or was it just that's the job for the week?
First of all, I was such a baby when I made them, you know. They were just jobs. I was a bit wary. I thought I might be frightened, you know, by the special effects and all that kind of thing. Yes, come down, everybody. Make yourselves at home. Lie down. Hello, everybody. Come on down.
Hello.
Hello. We're trying to keep it intimate for the Q&A.
Yeah.
Trying to keep it intimate for the Q&A.
Actually, speaking of that, was it hard to act with special effects?
So repeat the question, because these dear folk were just coming in. Repeat the question, Emmet.
Okay, I was just saying with the appeal of Hammer, the kind of enduring longevity of it.
Yes.
Did you ever see that coming, or was it just a job for the
I
week?
think it would. This answer would apply to all film. That we had no idea when we made these things, you know, that it would last as long as the cinema was showing it. I mean, I never thought any of them would be shown on television. You know, I mean, they were very late night at the time, very late night. Usually after the main feature, weren't they? You know better than I can remember the posters. So no, the answer specifically for the Hammer is absolutely not. We knew nothing about VHS or DVD or sales abroad, or, you know, the fact that people would come up to me and say, you know, they'd seen it when they were in their hotel room in Japan or something like that. You know, I mean, it's a shock to the system, but it's a lovely shock.
But
so the answer is a spread. No idea.
Do you think that would have affected, though, if you had known when you were making it? Do you think you were happy in the
Depends which particular one you're referring to.
Okay. Well,
I think the one you're going to see tonight has a huge innocence about it. I think it's a really beautiful, very nostalgic, rather sad. I always call it an autumnal film. It was one of the last, wasn't it, Emmet?
It was.
That Hammer made before it was all change. At the time it was made, cinemas were not doing too well. People were glued to their tellies. Can you hear me at the back?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah.
People were glued to their tellies, and a lot of cinemas at that exact time were turning them into studios. I remember my local Richmond Odeon. I went with wonderful director Richard Lester, and we were the sort of guests of honour.
Superman too.
And we opened the Odeon as studio cinemas. You know, they, instead of one vast sort of Egyptian emporium as it was, suddenly it was all cut up into little bits, but very successfully. I mean, everything was being seriously rejigged, and I think that the Hammer films particularly have gained far more popularity since then than ever they did then. It was for a minute audience in those days.
To the point now where there's a coffee table book in which you are the cover star.
I am.
Cover girl among
and I
cover
didn't
girls.
pay anybody off, and I didn't sleep with anybody.
How did that feel, though, being the representative?
No idea why they chose me or it.
We all know why they chose you. Go on.
Well, anyway, I was thrilled about it. Absolutely thrilled about it. I think it's a beautifully produced book, isn't it?
It's lovely.
Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, everybody in it comes out so well. That doesn't always apply to all books, definitely not, but that's a particularly good one.
No, it's about like a celebration.
Thank you.
Were you dubbed for the Vampire Lovers, or? And then you play a mute in this film. So what's going on?
I had the most dreadful squeaky voice. I was telling somebody earlier that I was in The Two Ronnies. Has anybody here seen The Two Ronnies? Yes. And you'll know my voice at the time. Hands up. Yeah. Well, I talk like that. And I talked about Dear Reader, didn't I? My diary. Yeah. You remember, and you remember Emmet. That was actually my voice. That was not put on. And an agent actually took me out for a meal. Actually, it was Pete and Dud. It was Dud's agent. We were all. It was a very small world in those days. Very tiny little world. Anyway, he just took me out for a lunch. And I don't even think for representation, just took me out. And he said, when are you going to do something about your voice? I was so hurt, because I thought my voice was all right. Well, it wasn't. And so, obviously, when I made The Vampire Lovers, they decided to re-voice me with this very dark voice. You know, Carmilla, I'm saying, aren't I like that?
And how was that project, though, with Roy Baker Ward?
I thought it came out quite well.
It was very posh, wasn't it? It was,
yes, very much. Too much, actually.
Yeah.
but wasn't it supposed to be a bit like that?
That's what they were pushing for.
They were.
But
They were also
really
pushing
was
for
after
other things at the time, and that, of course, was because audiences were sinking fast. So Hammer Films. That was the strange thing about the film you'll see tonight, is that there was absolutely no sex in it, and yet it was right in the heart of all these very voluptuous females showing, every tink. It was very odd that they made this film. I think, thank God they did.
You actually also get.
I think it's a little gem, and it is a film of which I am very proud. I won't be staying with you all for it, because I've seen it several trillion times. And I say that with hand on heart, because I think it's a great, great wee film, and the Hammer film of which I am most proud.
It's also it's a weird kind of pop cultural sense as well, because David Prowse, the body of Darth Vader, is in it.
Absolutely.
Patrick,
long before he did Darth Vader.
And Patrick Troughton, who's the second Doctor Who, shows up at some point.
Absolutely, he did, as
kind of a grave robber.
Digging up nasty things.
Bernard Lee as well.
Yeah.
Bernard Lee, my M at the time,
role,
just
M
about
at
the
the
same
time,
time I
yeah.
did the Bond film, and there's Bernard Lee as one of the inmates in the asylum. You'll see him. Yeah, great.
Actually, speaking of the Bond.
Actually, hands up, who's actually seen this film before?
Not yet.
No? Oh, great. Then I will enhance it for you. Yeah. So it's a film of which I am inordinately proud, and for all sorts of reasons I don't speak in it, as Emmet said, and you'll discover why. And it was very good, because it forced me. I was still a very gauche young actress at that time, and it actually forced me into using my face, not flapping it about, but about stillness, using the eyes, and it's absolutely amazing what you can do. I've always said that if God forbid, but if ever my voice was taken away from me, that's kind of how I would want to be, not flapping my face or all that, just stillness and listening.
It is like a throwback, because Hammer, obviously we said there were certain elements, but this kind of feels like a throwback to a more.
It's definitely a throwback almost to the 40s, really.
Yes, it has that kind of.
When people were sort of under contract and all that. Actually, several actors were under contract at that time. Shane Bryant, who plays opposite me in it, lovely young actor, he was under contract, and Ingrid Pitt was at the time when I made The Vampire Lovers. Who has seen The Vampire Lovers?
Me, for definite. Yeah. Fabulous.
So you've seen quite a lot.
I have.
Anybody else? Admit,
Yeah.
fess up. Yes. That was supposed to be for the Japanese version. And I didn't know what was going to be thrown at me, and what was
Ingrid
thrown
Pitt
at
was
me.
thrown at.
Ingrid Pitt and various other things were also thrown at me, yes. So this is a completely different departure, this one. I'm dressed from here to here in the most hideous outfits, straight off the, not off the peg. I mean, they were the cheapest things from Berman's and Nathan's, I think, which is the sort of hand-me-down outfitters, I don't look great, let me warn you. No makeup, but there's reasons for all that. So
You spoke about it being kind of autumnal, and there is a kind of a melancholic feel with Terence Fisher with his career,
very much.
and Peter Cushing. So how was the kind of process of working with them?
Well, Peter Cushing had only just lost his wife at the time and was devastated until the day he died, which wasn't for about another 20 years, which surprised me because he looked as though he had risen from the grave. I mean, he looked absolutely awful, which is fabulous for the film. It's so effective. You will absolutely love him in it. He's wonderful. And he used to disappear into the corner with Shane Bryant, absolutely incredible. The two of them, their heads together all the time, and Peter Cushing making minute little notes. I mean, they were incredible. They say, don't they? Is it Jane Austen, I think, and various other lady authors always used to write their novels and then hide the bits of paper, because lady writers, of course, were not approved of in the 18th and early 19th century. But that's very much the kind of script that Peter Cushing had. Tiny, minute little writing. A very detailed and an utterly dedicated actor he was.
I'll ask one more question before throwing it to the audience.
Yes, of course.
I just want to talk about, you speak about a fondness for like comedy over horror, but your Bond, the scene with
Because
Bond,
I love to make people laugh. But in fact, the Theatre of Blood, of course, which I did, was as much laughter as and eating your own,
But even in
dogs.
your Bond scene, there's a sort of a farcical element where you have to hide in the.
It's a comedy scene.
Absolutely, it's more of a sitcom than any other moment.
It's a sitcom. I would say it's music hall. At that time they started Coronation Street. No, actually, Coronation Street had been going for about 10 years, but it was still very much a comedy. They used to throw all the old Arthur Lowe and etc. actors into it, and it was wonderful. I mean, the one in the hairnet and so on, and all the old birds. There was nothing as it is today. And what was the question, darling?
In fact, it was more of like a.
Oh yes, my scene in the
moment.
Bond. Sorry, I was thinking of Vincent Price. Yes, totally. It was music hall, and Roger and I were so very obviously having a good time. Romping I have to say, very discreetly under the sheets. Nothing went on.
He was pretty suave.
Under the sheets. Lots went on under my dress,
But he kind of, there was an elegance to it in a comedy that was kind of like
Yes.
a watchword for Roger's era.
Definitely. And of course, this was the start for him. This was his first Bond film. And I am quite literally, his first Bond girl. And it's the first scene. And I think he wanted to make his mark with that. In other words, I am not going to be a sex fiend. I'm not going to be unpleasant. I don't like confrontation. And, come and have a romp with me. And people romped with him through 7 films.
Yeah, the longest
which
running.
I think, Emmet, is the most, isn't it?
Yeah, he's the longest running.
How many
Bond.
did Sean do?
He did like.
One less, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 6.
He did about 6.
6. And
But,
starting to be a
because he
bit
didn't
grudging,
do-
wasn't
but
it?
Roger Moore thought his last one though was pretty poor, View to a Kill. He said, "This is my time to move on." He was very much.
Yes, they speak rather rudely about that one,
Yeah,
which saddens me no end, actually.
yeah. He noticed that his love interest, like he could have been her father. That was the moment he said, "I got to get out of this." He can't
Who
talk
was
about
his love interest?
that. Who's
Anybody know?
He had the singer as one of them.
Well, Grace Jones was
Grace
in it.
Jones was one.
Oh, I don't think they got on.
I don't think anybody got on with
I
Grace
think
Jones.
that had something to
And
do with it.
Christopher Walken as well. He got on great with Christopher Walken.
Oh
but
yes,
He thought it was excessively violent. There's a scene where they mow down people with a machine gun, and he said, "This isn't Bond to him."
that would be where Roger would have parted company. No question, that would have been his swan song then. For that reason alone, because he did not like that. As long as it's fun and light-hearted, and unbelievable, but that's too close. Yeah.
I suppose we'll open
Open
it
up
to the
questions.
floor. If anyone has
So,
any questions
anyone?
for
Remember, I want highly intelligent,
Yeah.
difficult, risible questions.
We start with Graham there. He's got a.
He's got a list.
They're waiting to see the film.
Pick your best one.
Come on,
I've
Graham.
got several ones there.
Come on. Shout
Okay,
it out.
I'm gonna go to what could have been mundane one. These super soft.
Speak up,
shampoo
sweetheart. Speak up so they
Super
can hear.
soft shampoo advert, 1975.
It's those Vikings again, pillaging, plundering, running amok. Prepare yourself, our leader said. I have. I've washed my hair in whatever it was.
As the not tonight
Nobody could
Josephine.
ever remember the product. That was the problem. And they took it off because it was considered too rude at the time. It was removed. Yep. The idea that I enjoyed being, pillaged by the Vikings. And that is the truth. It was on, it was off. Yeah. What did you want to say about it, Graham?
I was just
Just that.
interested
I think
to
you
hear
covered
what
it.
I loved it. I loved it. That was a very stern, delightful director. And of course, because I'm sitting in here in awe of you all, I can't remember his name now, but he was top hole, as they say. And that dress that I wore in that commercial was not mine. There was a delightful girl screaming in the background, an extra, very nice, very sweet girl, and she was wearing that dress, and I was dressed in something up here, and he said, "Take it off her!"
Okay.
Maddie is going to wear that dress. So there we are. So I'm dangling there, aren't I? And they are dangling, if you know what I mean. Nothing will dangle in this film.
Yeah, Ross?
That's the question, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about Theatre of Blood.
Yes,
This is a
please.
film I absolutely love. I was just wondering, one, what was it like working with Vincent Price on the film?
Heaven.
And also, did you approach it as a comedy or horror? How did it feel on set? Was it a comedy set?
It
or
was a
horror
comic
set?
horror, wasn't it? It was a comic
Yeah.
horror, but it was such hard work, and a lot of the actors were elderly
Yeah.
and were more or less fainting in coils. And there was a night where we'd been filming from the crack until 11 at night, and in this what was supposed to be this sort of symposium of all the critics sitting around or whatever it was, and Ian Hendry, who liked a drop or 10, was fluffing his lines, and Michael Horden really let him have it. He really went for Ian Hendry. It was frightening.
Wow.
But, you know, they were all so overstretched and overtired and, you know, past it would be the word.
That was
I mean,
his pre-Paddington
we were all
days
past
as
it.
well, wasn't it?
That was what, Graham?
That was his pre-Paddington, because Michael Horden was well known for
Yes.
doing the voice of Paddington
Yep.
there.
What he best liked to do was fishing.
Okay.
He lived in Newbury and he loved to go fishing. That was what he best loved to do. He was also a wonderful theatre actor, Michael Horden.
Mm.
Actually, speaking of theatre, you did work with Alec Guinness.
I
on
worked
stage.
with Alec Guinness for a year in a play written by Alan Bennett called Habeas Corpus. And it was an incredible experience, absolutely amazing. I shared my dressing room with Phyllida Law, who's Emma Thompson's mum. And Emma Thompson was then a schoolgirl with braces. She used to come and sit there with her braces on in the dressing room, just sit there quietly, picking. Hard to imagine now, but yeah, sweet. That was a wonderful experience, Habeas Corpus. And you know Manuel in Fawlty Towers, he was in it. And anybody remember Patricia Hayes?
Oh gosh.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Wonderful Patricia.
Amazing
Edna the Inebriate.
actress.
I
was gonna say,
adored that lady. She was everything you think she was and more. She was amazing in it. She played Mrs. Swab, the sort of the voice of reason. And there's disgusting the old
Lovely
doctor.
line, sorry, lovely line from the play. The air is thick with the sound of chickens coming home to roost.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know the play.
I know it very well. Yeah.
Oh, good. Have you been in it?
I did it as an amateur show, and in my late teens,
Oh,
playing the young, and it's if you've never seen it, folks, it's
find a production
farce.
or
It's
read it.
Superb.
Thank you
British
so much.
farce.
Over, over, over.
Yeah.
Over, because she's always listening in, you know.
Yeah.
Over. I'm not really here. Over. She was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And Alec Guinness played this old roue doctor, you know. And of course, Alec Guinness actually had a huge paunch in real life, and of course he wore a corset to make himself look very pretty. Very pretty. Yes, but he was nice. He was great. If anybody's going to ask, he was super.
Yeah.
And that was before Star Wars.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him?
No. No.
He loved a gossip. Loved a gossip with his stage wife, Margaret Courtney. No, it was great. Wonderful. Wonderful experience. I was Felicity Rumpers.
Oh right. Yes, I can imagine that.
Good name. Excellent name. Among my top 10.
Do we have another question?
What made you get into acting, and how did your parents react to it?
Oh, my dad, too well. I should have known I wanted to act, because from first thing, I used to write plays for my friends. I used to bore their knickers on or off, writing plays and on the wonderful... My mum worked in an office at the time and used to bring back this typing, the copy paper, all the different coloured copy papers. And I used to write everybody's parts on the different colour copy papers. and then I had a huge dressing up box, and I created a theatre. Why did I not? I was tiny, 8, and 8 and 9, max. And I never thought, why don't I do this as a career? No, never thought. Oh gosh, it's a long, involved story. It was absolutely in me. This is this is a screed, this is a novel. But I got into a wonderful amateur acting group in Ealing. Anybody know it? The Questers.
Oh gosh, yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Top. Run by Alfred Emmet.
Nice.
And he took me on for the youth group. I learnt my parts. I was 15. And my form mistress in my convent school said, Madeline, you certainly can't do that. You're doing your O-levels. And I was never allowed to go. And it kind of crushed me. So that's the beginning of me losing a lot of confidence. So I never actually then, from that moment on, thought about acting. And so later, it kind of all evolved by accident, but I did get trained, and I would be here until midnight if I told you the full story.
You were modelling first, though, weren't you?
Well, no, I acted before the modelling.
Okay.
Yeah, the modelling was great fun. Yeah. Has anybody here heard of Bieber?
I was going to ask you a question
The fashion
about
shop.
Bieber, because
Yeah.
I like watching the Sky Arts programmes going back to the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
And they featured Bieber because they were on about Cilla Black.
Bieber was a
and
fashion
other
shop
pop
in
bands.
Kensington, started by a lady, a Polish emigre. Her father was shot by the Nazis, and Barbara Haleniki came to live in England, was a fashion designer, opened her own shop first in Abingdon Road, Kensington. I discovered it when I was still a schoolgirl, fell in love with it madly, begged to work there, and started the day after I left school. Barbara Haleniki invited me to be photographed for her first photographed catalogue, postal catalogue, that went through people's front doors. And that was amazing. And that kind of led to modelling-ish, sort of. My life is a series of fits and starts, really. I do something and then I go off at a tangent, and then I do something else and then I go off. But in a way, it's a pattern.
We'll take one more.
What did you want to say, sweetheart, on top of that then, quickly,
no,
Graham?
No, it's okay. No, it's
About
just,
Bieber?
Yeah, I was interested in Bieber, and how long were you there?
It was every girlie's fantasy was Bieber. And we were given a free dress every week. And I gave them away to my friend Catherine, who fitted them better than I did, because she was very, very petite and adorable. And I gave her all my Bieber dresses. And now they are worth a fortune. So I could cry now.
So can we get one more question?
Yeah.
If you had to choose one film or television show you were in, or play, to encapsulate what Madeline Smith is all about.
I can take you. I can cherry pick from each, if you like.
Yeah.
Whatever you prefer.
Theatre is a tour I did with the Cambridge Theatre Company. Any takers on that?
Yes.
Frederick Lonsdale play, 30s. Canaries sometimes sing. And I played a character called Elmer, who's always plotting, always up to no good. It was just a four-hander, my favourite ever part. I got such a joy out of that. That's the favourite theatre, even despite Alec Guinness and so on. I did a lot of touring. My favourite film, not necessarily for my part in it, but my favourite film, of which I'm most proud, is The Amazing Mr. Blunden, which is a ghost story for children, directed by Lionel Jeffries, starring Diana Dawes, and I played her music hall Regency daughter. Wonderful, wonderful little film, a real gem. And Telly, Doctor at Large, where I played Arthur Lowe's daughter for 5 episodes. He was a GP and I was his daughter, and I had so much to do in it. It was wonderful. And even my high-pitched voice seemed to be a bit more modulated in that one. And what are we left with? Comedy. After that. Well, that was comedy. And my favourite comedy actor, again, I have to come back to Arthur Lowe, who was my complete inspiration. One of my favourite actors that I ever worked with, I'm going to pick him out of the hat, Trevor Howard. Wonderful. He played my father in a film called The Bawdy Adventures of Tom Jones. He was totally adorable and such a wonderful actor. There you are. I rest my case.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for
And
coming
I
out.
hope you enjoy.
Thank you.